Welcome to the Listen Up Accord Show. This show is brought to you by the Ministry of Youth, Sport and Community Empowerment, Division of Youth Affairs, and in collaboration with CBC. Today is a very exciting show and a very exciting panel. Last week we had with us Dwayne, and he spoke to us. He moderated the show basically, and we spoke about mental health, and it ties right back into today's topic. However, I first want to mention a special congratulations to Miss Kim Hollingsworth, our last week's winner. She won dinner for two at the Pure Oceans restaurant right across the road from Divvy South Winds. And I heard that it was very nice, and I heard that the food was lovely, and the service was A1. And you know, it's nearby St. Lawrence Gap. And you can win with us as well, as long as you engage and interact with us constantly via our YouTube and Facebook at Division of Youth Affairs 246. Today's prize as well is another dinner for two at the Amigos restaurant in St. Lawrence Gap, where the action is. I've been there just last week. Service is on par, food is great, drinks are affordable, but this is a prize to you. Participate with us and you can win this prize. Today's topic is an interesting one. We're talking about COVID-19 and vaccinations. With me today, I have Mr. Shakeem Jordan, Dr. Hilary Moore, and Mr. Codie Parris. A very young, vibrant panel with me here today, and we are here to talk to you about COVID-19 and vaccinations. But we'll be right back with you after this short moment. Welcome back to the Listen Up Accord. Now, as of February 17th, we had a fully vaccinated population of 54.9%. And with that being said, the Ministry of Education also announced their very important announcement of going back to school. And now that going back to school is on the tips of everyone's mouths, we now have a video here to present to you on the return to school.
One rural secondary school has its plans fully in motion as it prepares to welcome students in a face-to-face setting on Monday. Principal at the Allen School, Julia Beckles, says not only the health and safety team, but also all ancillary staff have been on board with the effort to deliver a ready and conducive environment.
We've always taken into consideration that people are more productive if they are comfortable. So with that in mind, we have spared no effort in ensuring that our physical plant is ready for the return of our students and our colleagues. We also invited our health and safety team to do a walkthrough to give us any suggestions that they would have in order to ensure that we did the best we could to be ready for February 21st. And we are ready.
Most of the students have to endure one long ride or even take two buses, as many of them are not resident in St. Andrew, and that is something the school has focused on. The principal also wants the children to observe the protocols and think safety as if it's second nature.
We want our students to recognize the importance of remaining in their mask, keeping their physical distance as much as they can as they wait at the bus stops, and while they are in the bus, that they sit and they remain in mask until they get here to the Allen School. We understand that when they're at the bus stop and when they are in the bus, they really have no adult supervision. And we are hopeful that having spoken to them, having spoken to parents through our PTA, having communicated with our parents, indeed, we would have sent correspondence to our parents which outlined the behaviors, the expected behaviors, not only on the campus, but we actually included in the bus queue and on the bus.
Ms. Beckles says they met with all students on Wednesday to prepare them for being back on the physical plant.
We met with our students in a form period on Wednesday, all of them, so that the COVID-19 safety protocols could be discussed and read with them. And we have disseminated that information far and wide to our parents and guardians. We have added, through some gifts from the Ministry of Education, we've added more sanitization stations, and we've spoken to our support staff, and we are asking that there be more sanitization during the day, that they're visible, they're seen to be wiping the surfaces, the doorknobs after students exit classes, because in a secondary school, there is a lot of movement. Children don't stay in a committed classroom, they move, they share desks, and we are hopeful that we can have that higher level of sanitization.
The principal says they have had sessions with guidance counselors for first-timers. Luncheon hours will be staggered, and even the canteen protocols have changed as the Allen School gets back to class.
Now, we've just heard from the principal of the Allen School, and we know from experience how the ride to the Allen School can be quite a lengthy one from town if you really know where the Allen School is. And the principal has outlined a number of things. She outlined following protocols in transit to the school, waiting at the bus stop while at school. And I want to hear what the panelists think today about whether or not they think that the students will follow these protocols. So, Mr. Codie, what do you think about this? The situation which we face today, how excited the principal sounds, the students seem willing. Do you think this is safe?
The question on if I think it is safe, I don't really know how to answer it honestly, because it's kind of hanging there in the wind. I believe that everyone will try to abide by the rules, but will they? I think that's a very hard question. We're dealing with kids here, and I don't know how to feel about it. I feel conflicted. I'm not sure exactly how to answer.
I understand. So, Shakeem, what do you think about this situation which we face? You're a father. You have your own concerns. What do you think?
I honestly think that the ball is in the court of the students. Their behaviors would equally allow us to know whether it's best. And me as a father will hope that it will be a success. But truthfully, there's never the right time to do it. So it's either now or never.
Good. But are your children going back to school as well? Because we do know that the Ministry of Education have outlined a phased reopening. Does this phased reopening include your children personally, if you don't mind us asking?
Not a problem. Well, my daughter, she's currently at nursery, and like she said, her age group was always allowed to go to school. So, and that of itself was a very eventful experience, given the fact that we had the increase in cases, we had the influx in cases, and then being her age, it was difficult for them to necessarily not not be together. And then for their age group to even follow the protocols, it was even a challenge. So truthfully, it was an uncomfortable feeling, but as I said, it needed to happen more so now than ever.
Yes, I totally agree. So, you know, Dr. Moore, you probably have your own share of concerns about this move. Can we get your thoughts, please, on the return to school on February 21st?
Okay, hey, thanks for being here, for having me here. Okay, so there are two things you have to consider. The reality is that we have students who have been away from their peers for 2 years. That alone is a challenge. I mean, we're going to have some developmental challenges because they've not been able to interact. Remember, for children, their personality is not really is developed part at home, but part is around being their peers. So I do understand the need for them to return to that environment. The challenge we're going to have is right now we're in a time where we have a variant that is highly contagious. Yes, even though a lot of people that get it aren't necessarily getting severely ill, but the reality is that by the law of numbers, if a lot of people get infected, there will be some people that will get ill. So there is that major drawback when schools open. I think it would be a false belief to think that students are not going to be breaking the protocols. And I'm not saying this as a slight to young people, but the reality is that they have not had their peers around them for a long time. Even as big adults, once we get in a setting where we're around people we haven't seen for a long time, yes, we know we're not supposed to be, necessarily touching each other, giving each other a hug and stuff like that, but you've not seen your peers for almost 2 years, or you've not really been around them in a close confine for 2 years. So protocols will be broken. I think if we think that they're not going to be, that's a false belief. But at the end of the day, we will try to advise them to be as safe as possible, try for them to, keep thinking about, not doing it as much as possible. But we are going to have challenges. Regardless of when we open schools, we're going to get challenges. My only challenge that we open it now, when we have a variant that is still highly contagious, and even if the numbers total are getting better, the percentage positivity is still quite high. And we've actually had quite a few deaths in the last few weeks. So that is where my major concern is.
Yeah, well, thank you, doctor. But what about our vaccination rate, which seems to be past the halfway mark of the entire population? Doesn't that contribute in some way to the decision made to return to school on February 21st?
Well, I am not part of the government return to school plan. Mm-hmm. So I would assume that is a part of our return to school reason. However, my challenge with that is that if you break down that percentage, you're going to find that percentage does not have a large number of the 12 to 17 eligible population, as in that school age population. I think the last one was just over 50%. And I could stand correct because I don't have the figures in front of me, of the 12 to 17, which means that we're putting students where 1 in every 2 students is not vaccinated in a confined space. It's one thing to say, yes, we need to have 3-foot distancing, but let's be fair, especially in a majority of our public schools, they don't have that physical space to really spread children out widely. And then at the end of the day, even though that's during the sessions when they're with a teacher, what happens at break, what happens at lunch, what happens before school, what happens after school? We know we're going to get a lot of intermingling, which is going to be in some parts unavoidable. So even though, yes, we do have just over 50% vaccinated population, if we look at the 12 to 17, which is the school children or the school age population, the percentage rate from what I remember, is just over 50%. And is that enough when they're going to be in small confined spaces? Remember, even when you go into a bank, every time you use a counter, somebody's there to wipe down the counter. We really don't have enough people in our country that can be wiping down counters, wiping down doors after these large sets of students are when they're at school and between classes. So we hope for the best. We're gonna try our best, but I do believe that we have to be prepared for having a significant rise in numbers once they start back school.
Yes, and you know, we may, even if there is a rise in numbers, at least they've placed the randomized testing in place so that we can identify those who get ill. But what, Doctor, I'm interested in finding out, what is your position? Because we're speaking about the vaccinated and we're saying maybe not enough of them are vaccinated to return to school. But what is your position on vaccinating the under 12s with the Pfizer?
So to be honest, again, I like to do a lot of statistics and math. So they've done a lot of the under 12, well, which would be the 5 to 12 age group, 5 to 11 age group, particularly in the US. They've actually vaccinated a large set of children, and they've not really had a lot of complications. So I personally don't see where we're going to have a lot of issues if we were vaccinating the 5 to 11 age group. The thing about it is that the Pfizer vaccine that they use actually has a different preservative as the one used in adults. So we don't have that available here. And also, WHO has not approved the use of the vaccine in the 5 to 11 age group, which is a further reason why we're not using it here. But the reality is that children are a major vector of viruses. And this is not just coronavirus. When you think about it, when people send their little children to nursery, to school, they generally will get a cold in the first week or two, they bring it home, the child gets better in 2-3 days, parents go down for a few days. Just because they're children, they're gonna, touch surfaces, they're not gonna cover their nose, they're gonna share things. So saying that children will not transmit it is not is not true, but vaccinations would be helpful. It's not available yet, so we're just gonna have to do the best as possible. But I personally don't have a problem with the 5 to 12 age group being vaccinated, in light of the fact that so many children have been vaccinated already without any significant adverse effects. No, that does not mean there may not have been a few children that had an issue, but the vast majority didn't. So with everything, remember, there's a risk of everything you take, even simple Panadol, there's a risk. So I don't think that the risk of getting vaccinated is significant if we were vaccinating the 5 to 17 age group for the information that we have available thus far.
Carter had concerns about the splitting of the dosage. What's your position on that?
All right, so I didn't hear the very first part of what you said.
Right.
I don't know.
Sorry. Dr. Joy St. John, she had concerns about the splitting of the dosage. What's your position on that?
Right, but I didn't get to read what she said, and I'm not sure if she was referring to the dosage with the children preparation. I think that's what people are confusing. Right. So Pfizer has 2 preparations, one for 12 and above, and a different preparation for the 5 to 11 age group. It actually is the preservative in each one is different. From what I gathered from what she was saying is not that children cannot get the one that was prepared for them. The issue is that it seems like there was some place where they may have been given the adult preparation in the smaller dose to children. So that's where the big challenge is coming from. So you need the Pfizer specific for children to give to children, not the adult preparation in a smaller dose.
Okay, I understand. Thank you so much for that, Dr. Moore. I just want to go back to Shakeem Jordan once more. You've just heard Dr. Moore and her concerns on the return to school, the concern that being real, students won't necessarily, they haven't seen their friends in so long, they'll automatically jump and gravitate towards each other. As a parent, have you been speaking to your children about the return to school and warning them of what can happen if they don't follow the protocols?
Well, as I said, the eldest of my children, is upwards in nursery level. However, I have brothers and sisters family members are that is back to school setting. There are risks apparently, but then there's also calculated risk, and you have to choose wisely in everything you do, in every walk of life. And applying it back to returning to school, as I allow them to know how they act for the past year and a half out in public before being in school is the same way they have to act. And you take the same precautions. You sanitize your you wash your hands constantly, you wear your mask, and you also ensure that you're not necessarily too close to your friends. Being cognizant of what the doctor has said, yes, which is very true. A lot of them may not have seen their friends in school, but they have other means of being connected to their friends. Where in this case, they don't have to be too touched or even too overly excited to even see them because they had other mediums to communicate or stay in contact with their friends.
Yes, but sometimes they say that there's no connection like physical connection.
That is true also.
Yes. So Codie, in your circle, in your friends group, I don't believe that you're a parent. If not, you can correct me. But in your friends group, what's been happening? What's the buzz around the going back to school? Are your friends comfortable?
Okay, so we're fairly comfortable. Well, in terms of going back to school, we're not impacted too much by this. Most of us, all of us, are actually at university, either here, overseas, or a little bit further than that. But I wanted to speak more so on the topic of the secondary school students and what the doctor said about the students touching all these services and not having someone to wipe down the desk. I wanted to say it in terms of that I think we have to take a practical approach, and the teachers and the principals have to be on their toes. I think taking a very, as I said, very practical strategy here would to be just sanitize the desk, sanitize the station. This is something that even I do. I've never caught COVID, and I just believe that I know that it could happen to me despite what I may do, but I just think that you got to take care of yourself, and you got to encourage students to take care of themselves. And being real, I don't think that no listening to the doctor and Shakeem speak, even yourself. I think that students are going to just be gathering together, just thinking about what my days as a secondary school student. The reality of it is that they're going to be together, but you got to encourage them not being in the outdoor spaces, keeping their mask on. Something that me and my friends do. I try to buy them sanitizers, but just in case, like if we run out or we going out, we might just be going to hang out in an open area like a car park in front of your flat instead of going inside. I think those are practical things that one could do to just protect themselves. And being that you're a young student, that's something that I feel you could take on into life, taking care of yourself.
Okay, Codie, thank you so much. I wanted to ask you though, do you have any strong personal views or suggestions as to how we've been treating or how we can treat COVID-19 as a country?
Okay, so I believe that COVID-19 is becoming more and more of a comical to me personally, and I know that we still need to keep our guards up and everything, but just really I sat down and I asked myself a question this morning. How long is COVID going to be around? In the next 5 years, will vaccines matter? And the question is I genuinely don't know. And do we need to be injecting kids under 12 years old? Some kids under 12, you're still developing your teeth. All your teeth haven't fall out yet. You haven't hit the age of going through puberty, and I don't know the effects that it would have on someone, and we don't know the effects that it would have on a kid the next 5 years. And it's something that I really got to think about, and I am not yet set on final decision. But I do not think that, well, confident in myself a little bit, but I don't think that the vaccine the vaccine should be like we no longer need to focus only on the vaccine because there are other important things to do, such as just protecting yourself, keeping up your mask, sanitizing. So yeah, those are my thoughts.
Thank you. Dr. Moore, you're the medical expert here. What do you think about what Codie just said?
I understand where he's coming from. And because I generally like to talk to people and find their opinions and things like that and figure out why it is that they have their opinions and their perceptions. Because everybody's opinion and perception is valid. But like I would like to first add, vaccines are not new. Mandatory vaccination, and I'm not saying that to say this needs to be mandatory, I'm just saying we've always had MMR, chicken pox, measles, mumps, rubella, which is the MMR. They even give Hep B. All these vaccinations have been given for decades. Remember, you get your first one soon after birth. You get them within the first few months of life. You get again at 6 months. You get at a year. You get at 18 months. You get again at 11. So making it sound like vaccines are a new entity isn't true. I do understand the concern where the COVID-19 vaccine comes from because people are saying, oh my goodness, how did a vaccine get developed so fast? But here's the same logic. When I was in medical school, how much decades ago, when I was in Trinidad and I needed to call my family, I had to stand up, wait in line at a phone box because I was on campus, collect call. My parents paid for the call. You know, now I can just whip up my phone and I can press and I can literally see the person in front of me. I can see their facial expressions. They're right there. Technology has advanced. Technology has not only advanced in the area of phones and IT, they've also advanced in the role of science. So in other words, vaccines that would have taken a long time before to prepare will not have to take that long now because there's also technology involved and technology is there again. Now, the issue we're having right now is this is a pandemic. This is the first pandemic anyone alive has ever been through. It's easy when you can look backwards and say, okay, if we saw this happen and this was the result, so we know what to do going forward. We are literally living in the fishbowl. We are literally living through the pandemic. I think one of the concepts that people are not realizing is that, they're saying, but we have a new strains. Why does the vaccine make any sense? Believe it or not, the old strains of COVID-19 have not died. They're still there. Just because you have a predominant strain causing infections right now does not mean that the old strains have died. They still exist. I've also had the conversations where people saying, but why is it we have to get multiple doses? But you do know you get multiple doses of MMR. You do know you get multiple doses of Tetox. You do know you get multiple doses of Hep B. And again, it is only with time. There's one thing technology cannot solve, and that's time. With time, you're going to know, okay, I only needed it now, and then I need my second dose in 10 weeks, or maybe I needed my second dose in 3 months. It is only with time and with studies are we going to know this fully. But right now, we are literally living in the fishbowl. So I understand concerns. I understand that, you're not sure of what's going to happen in the future. I think it would be false to say 100% it's going to be perfectly fine. But the reality is that the risk is actually a lot lower than people perceive it to be. And I think people need to realize that there's risk in everything in life. Even getting in your car to drive is a risk. You don't know if you're going to get hit. There's risk involved in everything. And what you need to do is you need to consider the risk over the benefits. And I think that is what you need to balance out. And just recognize that vaccines are not new. Everybody's making it sound like vaccinations are new. They're not.
Thank you, Dr. Moore. And we'll take a short break here, but when we return, we'll hear from Dr. Sonia Brown, the Honorable Minister of State responsible for QH and NCDs. We'll be right back.
of course, the fight will continue in terms of getting the vaccine administered to those who have not had or those who need boosters. This is the time now when the protocols are being loosened a little bit. Schools are about to start back in, and this is a most important gesture. As well, we look forward to sometime in the future to getting the children under 12 also vaccinated, and I'm hoping the U.S. government participates in that when it's ready.
So, welcome back. We've just heard from the Minister of State responsible for QVH and NCDs. And before we took the break, we had a very interesting discussion. And, you know, it was once again Codie and Dr. Moore just having brief discussion on vaccines and the importance of them, or according to Codie, the lack thereof. And I remember back when the vaccines first came about, we had many consultations at the secondary schools, and we had some famous ones that made headlines, like the one with Winston and what's not. By chance, did any of the panel get to attend these consultations? And if so, what were your thoughts on these consultations surrounding the vaccine and the evidence provided there? I'll start with Dr. Moore.
All right, so I didn't attend any of those consultations. I did hear some, I did watch some afterwards. And all I would say is I agree with people having their opinions. However, come with actual evidence. There were many things that were misquoted, that were not true. Also, I think that some of the questions that are raised that then physicians are accused of not knowing are also unreasonable. I know in one of them they were asking, oh, you don't know the ingredients in a vaccine. I don't know all the ingredients in Panadol. I know the active ingredient in it, which is acetaminophen, which is the actual drug. But all the other things that go into making it, I'm not going to know. There are thousands of pills out there. There is no way that I'm going to know every little ingredient in every substance. All right? So I think that there needs to be conversations, consultations on both sides, but I also believe that both sides need to be reasonable. And then not trying to throw, and as a healthcare professional, like I have no idea what I'm talking about because I don't know how much fructose, sucrose, as in when you're making lemonade in a vaccine. That is not my forte. I'm a medical doctor. I know the active ingredients. I know the main side effects. But to make it sound like a doctor is incompetent because they don't know every ingredient, to me that was highly inappropriate. I do understand the other side where you're not sure, you want some more information, and I have no problem with that. But I think one of my basic issues with a lot of those discussions, there was a lack of respect, and therefore I personally would never have been a part of those.
Dr. Moore, you took the words right out of my mouth, because I attended a few myself, and the reports that I have gotten from persons who attended some was the lack of respect. And it almost seemed as though you were going into a war zone, whereas as soon as you believe in the vaccines, you know, it was as though you were just being attacked. And I think, you know, the reference to lemonade and what's not, it was just a sight to see. You know, it was as though you had no voice in there. So
And what is
Mm-hmm.
yeah, sorry, not me to cross. I was saying, and what is unfortunate, it's not only in a sphere like that healthcare professionals are being attacked, which to me was really unfortunate. The reality is at the end of the day, it is a pandemic. It's a health pandemic. I'm not saying that all healthcare providers agree. There's things that we disagree upon, and that's fine. Therefore, there's not everything that the public and healthcare may necessarily agree on, and that's fine. But my problem overall was the lack of respect and regard towards, the healthcare professionals in particular, just because some of them, well, you know, are pro-vaccine. And I think we need to, at the end, I think this pandemic highlighted a lot of issues that we have in society as a whole. But I think at the end of the day, what we should really take away from it is that respect and regard should be given and received from all areas. And then when we work together and not work against each other, and when we learn to agree to disagree, then we will do better as a community.
Do you have any Do you have any thoughts on them? Codie, sorry, I was asking you, do you have any thoughts on the consultations, and did you get to attend any?
Well, I attended virtually, and before I get there, I want to say to the doctor, when I say vaccines, it's not that I'm against vaccines. I thought that, since we are here at a panel discussion for COVID-19, I thought we were speaking, when I say vaccines, I would have been referring to the COVID-19 vaccines. But to bring it back around, when looking at the discussions, I always thought that it was a reflection of how society feels. And from just looking at it, I chose no side. I just looked at it and analyzed, made my decision for myself. But from just looking at it, you could see that both sides clearly want something. It's not that the public is being disrespectful. It's that they feel like they're being forced into a corner, and they have no choice but to fight back. And sometimes you get passionate in making a point. Whereas for the professionals, I know that you're trying to achieve a goal, and from just looking at it from the whole, as I said, it's just almost like a head-on clash. Those persons who would have thought to be, or that they think that their rights are being violated, those are the persons who came out. It's not that the others feel the same way. It's not that the entire public feels the same way. It's just the persons that came out. They felt like their voice had to be heard. So that's why it would feel like, you're being disrespectful. And I just think that, whilst a doctor may be a doctor and a man is just a man, I believe that everyone has their concerns. It's not that we don't trust vaccines, or it's not that persons don't trust vaccines. It's that, you don't trust this one. And whilst, yes, there are major concerns, and the risk and everything, I just feel like what I believe and what my gut tell me is what I'm going to go with. I'm going to sit down and I'm going to make a decision. It doesn't mean that it's not calculated. It doesn't mean that I don't care about persons around me. It doesn't mean that I don't care about myself. I just believe that, the vaccine isn't for me. I'm not saying that because I've actually taken, but I believe everyone has their decision to make. Just because I don't take the vaccine, it doesn't mean that I'm not going to take precautions to avoid COVID. I know many persons who don't have the vaccine who is yet to caught COVID. I know persons who have the vaccine who wouldn't have caught COVID, and I know persons who had the vaccine obviously had ones to catch COVID. Those are my thoughts.
Thank you, Codie. Very well said. But before we go on to Shakeem, I just want to ask you, Codie, you mentioned that persons don't trust the vaccine. And for those listening who share that same sentiment, I just want to ask, what are some of the reasons that persons may not trust the vaccine? Is it the speed in which it was manufactured in? What exactly is it? What are some of the reasons?
Okay, so being that COVID-19 was the main point, I believe, in everything. Like, obviously, if you're the owner of a company and this one thing is so important to your business, you're going to focus all of your resources. So to those who thought the vaccine was developed fast, yes, it was developed fast, but you could rest assured that they would have put majority, if not all of their resources behind developing the vaccine, because at the time, it was seen as, the cure. It was seen as, well, let me not say the cure, but it was seen as the one thing that could save us. But still, persons wouldn't, there's some persons who just don't trust it. They just don't trust big pharma companies. Big pharmacy companies, pharmaceutical companies are not ranked top 5 on your trust list. And it's proven. It's a fact. But, I think a lot of the concerns are just, I don't want to put it in my body. I just don't want it. Unlike the other vaccines, being very clear, unlike vaccines like the MMR, the MMR, I don't have the technicalities, but the other vaccines that will protect against other viruses such as measles and dengue and whatever else, they are proven to protect you against against viruses. Are they more proven? I would say is a concern that you would hear from persons, unlike the COVID-19. You've got the vaccine, but being that media is not amplifying the amount of persons that would be getting the virus with the vaccine and yada 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 yada. I think that it's just you don't really get time to just sit down and think. Today I tried to do some research, and I just had to buy my bed because it was just too much, too much going on at once, and the messaging unclear, and it's just there are a lot of issues, but I can't touch all.
Thank you, Codie, and we really love and enjoy your passion that you brought to the show today, and I really want you to keep it up. Shakeem, I want to know if you have any thoughts on what we were just speaking about, but also how are your parent friends treating to this matter, and how are they preparing their children in terms of advice, school materials? I know that there was a rush in terms of back to school clothing. So how are your parent friends and yourself treating to this matter? Oh, okay. Shakeem is stuck, so we can keep going. Dr. Moore, you have any response for what Codie just said?
I understand where Codie's from. I think that he may not have understood fully what I was saying. So I wasn't saying that we aren't talking about COVID-19. I was just using MMR and those as just examples that vaccines exist. I do understand where he's coming from, where he's like, big pharma and their aim, because at the end of the day, a lot of the big companies, that's what their aim is profit. So I can understand the concerns from that. But I would also like to rebut and say, if you have cancer, you use chemotherapy agents. Chemotherapy agents are drugs that are there to attack cells. The side effects of chemotherapy agents are way worse. And there isn't an issue with taking that. I know we're talking about COVID-19 vaccine. So where for me personally, I am having a challenge is when persons are saying the side effects are so bad for COVID-19 vaccines, when you have proof that they've had some, agree, but not that many. But if it was a cancer drug, they will take it. Even the concept of big pharma, I understand, because again, it's about profit, but there's no issue with big pharma when they're making cancer therapy that costs 7 and 8 and 10 times more than the vaccine costs. So it can't just be financial. So for me personally, I still am not fully understanding all of the concerns. I do understand when people say, however, tried, tested, and true vaccines. The problem is that tried, tested, and true vaccines came because the pandemic surrounding that virus was years ago. So we are now looking back on it and say, yes, this one worked, this one didn't work. Because guess what? Not all vaccines had worked. Even the vaccine spacing changed from time because they figured out which spacing was better, but that takes time. And even with all the tech that we have, the one thing we can't rush is time. So I know people say that, oh, we want something that makes sure we can't get it. Yeah, that would be ideal. But you know how you get that type of vaccine? With time. Which we're still, because we are literally living in the fishbowl. That's what I mean by saying living in the fishbowl. So it's a little bit harder because you're literally living through the trial, as opposed to when you're able to look back and see what worked, what didn't work, and literally know how it would affect you generally. So I do get it to an extent. Some of it I don't really fully understand personally. And as I said, I speak for me personally. But I do understand some of the fears and hesitancies. And I like to also say that I know definitely there's a difference between an anti-vaxxer who's not about any vaccines at all. And there's also anti-COVID vaccine and there's also vaccine hesitancy for the COVID vaccine too. So there are different realms, there are different shades of gray, and I see them. I may not always understand them, but I do respect them. And as I tell people all the time, I am open to conversations once the conversations are respectful on both sides, as they are today.
Thank you, Dr. Moore, for mentioning as they are today. And we'll take a short break here, and when we return, we'll be right back with the reviews of students on their return to school on Monday, February 21st. This is the Listen Up Accord Show.
I feel like I learned everything I need to know at school. I don't feel any way about going back to school. I have no fears. Well, I would love to see my classmates and see how they're doing, but I prefer face-to-face. I just don't want to think about the bad things, I just want to learn.
No and yes at the same time. I don't really know if I want back to school or not. I have no fear of going back to school, and I have 50% out of 100 of excitement and not excitement of seeing my friends at school. I prefer face-to-face for school. I am really not sure if I will get sick or not at school.
And we're right back from the break. So, Dr. Moore, I mean, you have it right in front of you. The students want to go back to school, and it is our duty to ensure that they do it in the safest way possible. Do you have any advice at all for any parents at home listening today?
Okay, so to be honest, first of all, give your children all the equipment that they need. Their hand sanitizers, spray bottle, wipes, masks, and if you could, ideally disposable. But if you've used the cloth one, but if you're going to send cloth masks, send at least another one or two, because just in case it's hot, you sweat, you want to be able to change it. It's going to be really hard to tell, especially young ones, that they can't be that close to their colleagues. So you try to explain to them as much, try not to be too close, but I think it would be a false thought that they're not going to do it, because they're children. I mean, children, especially the young ones, by nature, are very loving and they're very sharing. So I would say it is, trying to prepare your child as much as possible, but it also means that you as a parent need to be very vigilant. So the thing about it with viruses in children, as I was saying earlier, children can get a virus, they get a few symptoms, and then they're perfectly fine. The same thing can happen if it is COVID-19. So you need to be very vigilant with your children. If they get any vomiting, any diarrhea, it doesn't have to last for long periods, a bit of stuffy nose. There's always that potential. And if you do see it, then maybe keep them home, get them tested, and see what they're doing. I also think that there's been a lot of pressure that the teachers need to do many different things. I think that's unfair and unreasonable to teachers. When you have a teacher with a class of 25 to 30 students, it's going to be very difficult for that one teacher to be doing all these different things. So I would say teachers can try as much as they can, but I think it's also unreasonable to expect them to do everything. It's going to be a rough start. I'm sure that mistakes are going to be made, but you know what? You learn from mistakes. And then when we see mistakes, then we can decide, okay, how can we improve to go the next step? And I think it's just parents, I understand your fears. I have my fears too. But they're going back to school. That's going to happen. So let's prepare them as much as possible. Just make sure they have their supplies or their own personal things to protect themselves, and talk to them every morning, talk to them every evening, and just try to encourage them, to distance as much as possible, hand sanitize, and those type of things, and wear their masks. And for little ones, try to encourage them not to share their masks, because children generally share.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Moore. But what about the double masking? We've heard a lot of advertisements going around about double masking. Do you advise double masking?
Okay, so the need for double masking is, again, the more protective layers you have between you and the environment, hopefully the less ability to transmit. But I would say even more than double masking, it's also making sure you have on an appropriate mask. I've seen some people that have had really small masks, that there's a big space at the side. So I would say before double masking, ensure you have on an appropriate size mask. You find that little children, sometimes the masks are really too big. You may have to put little knots in them, which sometimes can hurt the ears. There actually is some places where you can get little bands, so they are on the back and it hooks onto that, so it keeps it a little bit tighter around their face, so you get a better fit. So it may be better to have a better fitting mask than to double mask and having double masks that are very loose and unfitting. Yeah, I think that is the best thing I can say about that. Double mask, it's supposed to be better because it gives you more layers between you and the atmosphere, but only if they're applied properly. So I personally would prefer, if you're wearing, even if it's one mask but well fitting, than double masking and they're loose and exposed to everything.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Moore. Shakeem, I'm glad you're back with us. I have a question for you. I just wanted to know, in your circle of parent friends, how are you advising your children on the return to school? Like, I know that there's a huge rush in terms of getting back to school clothes and material. How are you advising your children in the return to school? Shakeem?
Oh, apologies. So, well, the way how our parental group is handling the reopening of schools is that they're actually still coaching their children, as in they're still trying to prep them and giving them the pep talk, as in, all right, listen, you're about to leave the nest again. We need you to stay focused and be vigilant and careful as much as you possibly could. But they're still not trying to pressure them, because we are keep giving this notion that if you catch COVID, it's the end of the world. And truthfully, in some scenarios, much less than most, it is the case. But truthfully, we need to live and continue to move on and develop with it, because it's here to stay. It's not going to go anywhere. It's probably going to just stay to one stream, and then we have to continue life. But bringing it back to the children, though, when I talk to my little brother, he's rather excited. He's actually more comfortable in the face-to-face setting than the virtual learning. So it is going to work in his advantage more so than it would be a disadvantage to many. But even when I went to the barbershop today, the children were actually happy. They said they can't wait to see Miss Beckles or Miss Clark, and actually go back to that setting.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, we just had a question in the comments, and I think it's a very interesting question to end off today's show with. Someone wanted to know, we took 3 vaccines. How many more do we need to take? And I think they were directing that to you, Dr. Moore.
Okay, here's the reality. Remember, I kept saying we're in the fishbowl. So...
Sorry?
No, you can hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you, Dr. Moore. Go ahead.
Sorry, right. So I was saying we're actually living the fishbowl. So how much doses it would take? Again, we are literally living the experiment. My personal take is that the next dose, I would hope, is actually one that encompasses all of the newer strains. And not necessarily getting a 4th dose of the exact same thing that we've received before. But again, as we could tell, you can't really predict this virus is mutating at different rates, strengths, and doing all different strange things. So honestly, as I said, we're living the fishbowl, we're living the experiment, we're living the actual pandemic, and we're only going to know as time progresses.
Yes, thank you very much, Dr. Moore. Codie, any final words from you as we look to wrap up?
I think even though me and the doctor we may have two different looks at the vaccine, I think at the end of the day, protection first and foremost is what unites us, and I think what in this conversation is what unites us. I think like just looking to take practical steps. Vaccination is not horrible, but for those who may not be certain, I think you continue the conversation and you continue the conversation and try to convince them if so. But you must at the end of the day respect them, and at the end, as the doctor said as well, respect is key. But those are my final words, I guess.
Thank you very much, Codie. You did a very good job today. And Shakeem, any final words from you? 30 seconds.
My final comment would be, I just hope that all goes well, and I can't wait for school to resume.
I'm with you on that one. Dr. Moore, closing comments?
I would just say, everyone, think pros and cons, be as safe as you possibly can, protect yourself, protect your loved ones, protect the people around you.
Thank you very much. And I just want to say that, through educational programs, I'm sure that the Ministry of Youth, Sport and Community Empowerment are putting in place with their different youth commissioners in the different districts, educational programs, community programs. I'm sure that we can all help one and reach one. So, let's just continue to fight. And as Shakeem and Dr. Moore said, they both had different views today, but they did it in a very diplomatic way, and they understood each other, and that's what we need to do going forward. And rather than feeling as though we're in a very hostile and war zone-like environment in the Wild Wild West. And that's it for me today. I've been your host, Tyrell Giles. It was great having you here today on the Listen Up Accord, brought to you by the Ministry of Youth, Sport and Community Empowerment, Division of Youth Affairs, and the Caribbean Broadcasting Corporation, CBC TV 8. Join us next week, and we look forward to seeing you there.